Hello, welcome to Thursdays on the Stoop. I'm Julian, one of Blue Stoop's two co-directors and only two staff members. We are a small literary arts nonprofit serving the greater Philadelphia area and the rest of you on the internet. I'm so glad you could find time in your busy schedule to be here. We have a really fun session today with Toby Tieger called How to Find a Story Worth Telling. Toby's a screenwriter and playwright living in Philadelphia. He writes LGBT plus coming of age fantasies about well-intentioned humanists figuring out what they value in a world that's hard for them to navigate. One of his scripts placed as a top 2% semifinalist at the 2025 Austin Film Festival, and another script was a top 10 out of 900 finalist in a 2024 Screencraft competition. His scripts are available on the New Play Exchange and on his website, tobytieger.com, which I will share in the chat. Toby is also, I'm just going to add, a spring teaching artist, and he'll be teaching a class on script writing this semester, and there is only one seat left as of this call. So if you're curious about that, I encourage you to jump on it. There's also a wait list, which is always worth signing up for. You never know what might happen. So with that, Toby, take it away.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. It's really nice to see all of you. And thank you, Blue Stoop. So my name is Toby. I am going to be talking about how to find a story worth telling, which is coming up with your thematic statement 101. About me, literally everything Julia just said. So yes, that stuff. I'm going to vamp for like 2 minutes. I'm sorry. So Stoop session etiquette, if you can please use the chat to write out your responses, or you can write stack in the chat if you'd like to speak during the session, just write stack. Please use iComments. Allow time during discussion sections for everybody to share. We only have an hour. And everybody from all experiences, from all backgrounds is welcome here. So whatever your experience level, please. And last thing of vamping, I promise. I do not want to get sidetracked by this, but just this is effectively a basic map for honing in on the story of that you want to tell. If you want to share it with other people, please do so. I would love it if you want to share it. With that said, please refrain from including it in anything that's an AI session. And if you pass it along to anybody else, please ask them to refrain from including it in an AI session. The goal is to keep it for other people, not for AI, at least for a little while. And vamping is done, I promise. Okay, what are we going to be covering today? There are three things. What is the thematic statement that you want to be exploring in your story? What is the story that you want to tell? And how do you turn this into a logline? A logline is essentially just a streamlined description of your story. It's your one sentence of this is what my story is about. So that's it. And then how can you build in accountability for yourself to write the story that you want to write once you've got it? So what are these? This is why are you telling the story that you're telling? The thematic statement is your why of why is this important to you? The what is the story that you're telling? And then the accountability is how are you going to get yourself to write the thing because writing is hard, as we all know. Okay. People often start with a concept or a theme. Examples can include sisterhood or brotherhood or parenthood, or it might be dolphins fighting zombie pirates in space, because that would be cool, or a satirical look at ride sharing, or the Stonewall Uprising, or why are so many poorly funded schools, they have these significant reforms, and yet the schools continue to be so similar despite all the reforms that are happening. These are all great ideas. The zombie pirate one is great. They are just not yet stories or thematic statements. So what is a thematic statement? A thematic statement is not simply a theme. It is a dramatic argument that you as the writer are making. So for example, at their core, people never really change. Or everyone and everything is constantly changing, and no matter what you do, you can't stop it. And you can imagine a story that tells you either of those things. Hold on tight to the people that you love. Fight for them. I've seen that story many times. If you love someone, you need to be willing to let them go. Finding Nemo. That's essentially what that story is at its essence. Um, so we're going to go back. Parent Parenthood. Parenthood is a theme. Thematic statement would be parenthood is the best thing ever. Every Parenthood is the most amazing thing you could ever do with your life. That would be a thematic statement. Another thematic statement would be don't be a parent. No matter what you do, don't be a parent. Those are both thematic statements because they are claims that you're making. So, in terms of determining what the thematic statement is that you want to explore, a good litmus test to know if you have a thematic statement is if you'd be potentially able to argue the opposite thing. Um, Thematic statements do not have to be innovative or clever. They just have to be something that you really believe in your heart of hearts. So here are two thematic statements of things that don't seem related, and yet, Stranger Than Fiction. Is anybody remotely familiar with this movie? Maybe. Hey, excellent. So I would argue that the thematic statement of Stranger Than Fiction is that everybody dies eventually. Before you die, you need to live your life fully, even if it's riskier. It's about an IRS agent who is living his life very, very safely, and then by the end of the movie, he is coming to understand that maybe you have to include some risk for other people. Um, The Handmaid's Tale, the book, not the show. Democracy is fragile. Freedoms can be stripped away at any moment. It's better to fight back in whatever small ways you can, even though it's riskier to fight back than simply comply. Those are two thematic statements that the stories themselves are completely different, but the thematic statements are rather similar. They are about going outside of your comfort range, even though it's going to be riskier for something that you see as valuable. So the first one would be I'm gonna have a couple of these, just so you know, of 3 minutes of journaling and then talking through what we're seeing. So if you could just think about some of your favorite books or movies or plays or whatever stories that you care about, and what are those thematic statements for you? If you're thinking that you're struggling to come up with what the thematic statement of a story is, you can think of it as what does the character learn or how do they change from the beginning of the story to the end of the story? There's usually a moment where you watch them having shifted. That's usually the thematic statement of the story. Um, that's for an internal story. For an external story, external plot, which are like murder mysteries and things where the protagonist doesn't really change, usually they exemplify something different than the rest of the characters. So, if anybody saw the N.K. Jemisin talk through Blue Stoop in the last month. She talks a lot about how Knives Out, the protagonist, is doing an external plot because she doesn't really change over the course of the story. But she does exemplify something that everyone else in that movie is not doing. She is honest and kind. Everybody else is awful. Um, Final thing about this is there's no wrong answers. We are trying to figure out for ourselves what thematic statements are, not find out the right thematic statement of the movie or the book or the play. Because it really is about coming up with something that is for you to use as a writing tool, not something for you to use as understanding whatever the thing is. So if you could just take a couple of minutes and I'll set a timer, and think about the thematic statements of stories that you care about. Okay. Um, hey, folks. So if anybody is feeling like they want to share, if you could put it into the chat, you can write stack in the chat if you want to get on, if you want to unmute and talk. And really, the goal is just to figure out what some of the thematic statements are of your favorite stories, and then how that relates to the thematic statements that you might want to explore in your next story.
I'll share. I had a few, but one I was thinking of for sinners is that it's more important to live naturally and in community than to follow one's personal desires.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Um, your Khalid, is it is it pronounced Khalid, by the way?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay, cool. Thank you. And then I'm going to read a couple from the chat. Mars C said, Up, the adventures of a lifetime aren't just doing big things in faraway places. Adventures also come in quieter, intimate experiences with the people that you love and who love you back. Yes. Um, Invader Zim says, Caitlin Sierra. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing anybody's name. I'm terrible at that. Humanity, as it is now, is completely unprepared for an invasion from a technologically advanced malicious force. No matter what forces confront humanity, it can always bounce back through luck and spite. I have not actually seen Invader Zim, but I now really want to. Um, and Julian says, Jonathan Abernathy, you are kind. Climbing the corporate ladder can have unbearable spiritual, social, and physical consequences. Awesome. I don't know Jonathan Abernathy, you are kind, but yes, very cool. And Leah Master Polo says the tiger's wife, T. Obrecht, understanding a person's history and cultural context is essential to understanding who they are and why they act as they do. And that last one I'm going to read and then we'll move. But Ben Bow says, detransition baby, an unexpected pregnancy causes three women to reflect on motherhood and womanhood. Cool. Yes. Thank you. Thank you all. So, exactly. So these are thematic statements. They are slightly different from themes because themes come in one word, or they are very much just an idea, as opposed to they are a statement that somebody is making about how people act. Um, okay. So main concept of this is what is the story that you want to tell and what are the thematic statements that you want to focus on. So a story specifically, the way we're talking about it here, is made up of three elements that are interacting with each other. I did a Blue Stoop Thursday on the Stoop talk few months ago that was specifically about story. If you want to see that, it goes more in depth into how stories are told. But essentially, the way I understand it is there are three elements. You can imagine this thing like a magnet. So on the one side, you have your protagonist who has an intention, a want, a goal, a desire, a thing that they are trying to do. And on the other side of that magnet or clothesline or however, thing with two sides, you have them facing an obstacle or a conflict or a problem or an opposing force that's in the way of them doing the thing that they want to do. In order to have a story, you have to have conflict. To have conflict, you need to have intention, you need to have obstacle. Um, if we imagine our protagonist has an intention, their intention is they are moving forward, and there is an obstacle in their way. The third element that you need for a story is for them to use tactics. They need to be an active protagonist. They need to do something to get around the obstacle to get what they want. And those tactics can be literally anything. The tactics could be fighting or begging or stealing or negotiating, anything that they want, but they are trying to get what they want desperately, and they are using the tactics to get around the obstacle to do it. Is that, sorry that it might seem simple, but does that seem clear to folks? Thank you. Thank you for nodding. I appreciate it.
Wait, what are the three building blocks of the protagonist again on that last slide?
Intention. Yep. Intention, obstacle, tactics.
Okay, great, thanks. Oh,
Yep.
is that the same as the prior slide?
Yeah. So essentially what I did was I took it and I shifted it to the left and I said, these are some of the tactics that you might use to get around your obstacle. But you've got a protagonist and then the obstacle in the way and then the tactics that they're using to get around the thing. Cool. So the concept of this talk is what is the story that you want to tell and how does the thematic statement you want to explore map onto that story? So we're going to do an example one. So we're going to take from our concepts and themes that we had before. You remember the dolphins fighting zombies, but instead we're going to focus specifically on Stonewall, the Stonewall Uprising, which at this point is not yet a story and not yet a thematic statement. It's just a concept. If we want to write about Stonewall, the Stonewall riots, the Stonewall Uprising, hypothetically, the protagonist might be the person who's the least likely person that we can imagine right now to join the Stonewall Uprising. Realistically, there's like 20 different versions of the person who's the least likely, but we're just going to go with one for the moment. So we're going to say a closeted gay man goes out for his very first time to a gay bar, and it just so happens to be the Stonewall Inn on June 27th, 1969. Oh no. So that is our protagonist. He is the least likely candidate to be part of the Stonewall Uprising. What does he want? For the story that we're going to tell, we're just going to make up some stuff. He is going to get to the club and he's going to meet a guy and they're going to become friends at the club before it gets raided. And then the club gets raided, as happened in Stonewall, and our main guy gets released. He gets let go. But the guy that he befriended back in the club is still inside and he's getting beaten. And our protagonist now has to make a choice. Do I run away because I'm safe, or do I stay here and help the guy that I befriended? And so he has to choose to stick with his community to rescue his friend. What is the obstacle in the way? Intention is I am going to help this guy that I befriended. Obstacle in the way is if I get arrested, I'm going to get outed as gay and I live in 1969 and I might lose my job and or my family. That is an obstacle that he might be facing, hypothetically. What are the tactics that we see? Well, our protagonist is let go. He's let out the door. He stands stock still. If he stays, that is him making a choice, but it's not a very active choice yet because right now, all that's happened is he was let go and he didn't move. So in order for us to have an active protagonist, we're going to have him throwing beer bottles or throwing sticks or throwing the bricks at the police station wagon as people were doing on the first night of the Stonewall riots. Is that generally making sense to folks of how I'm mapping this? Cool. Thank you. So our logline then, because the logline is literally just how do you very simply say what is the thing that the story is about in one sentence. Our logline is when protagonist has an experience, they gain an intention despite the obstacles in their way. When a closeted gay man goes to his first ever gay bar, he winds up in the Stonewall Inn on the night of a riot, and he has to decide to join the gay rioters against the police, even though it might cost him his job and his family if people find out he's gay. I have effectively taken all that stuff and summed it up into one sentence by doing the logline sentence. And that is the story that I then am telling. I realize it seems simple to y'all. I apologize, but I promise there's a reason. We take all this stuff and now we say, what is the thematic statement? The thematic statement can be anything I want it to be. So I am going to say that sometimes you have to fight to defend the people that are in your community, even though it might cost you personally. That is the thematic statement that I am taking away from that story that I've just told. The thematic statement you are taking away from the story I just told might be gay bars are really important and they are a national treasure. We should have more of them. That can be your thematic statement. Whatever it is, it's great, but you have to have one. Why do we create a thematic statement? Because that becomes your guiding light. Once you know that thematic statement, whatever it is, that is your North Star that you point to, and you say, this is what my story is about. This is the thing that I will hold tight to. Plot points might change, characters might change, settings might change, but this is the thing that is my story at its essence. Um, so let's play the game. So instead of having it be he befriends a guy, maybe he befriends a lesbian. Doesn't change your thematic statement. Maybe he doesn't befriend the guy in the club. Maybe he hooks up with the guy in the club. Doesn't change your thematic statement. Maybe he's not a he, he's the lesbian. And as we know, lesbians went through a really rough time when they were going through the Stonewall. Like that was a really tough situation. It's a different story, very much, but your thematic statement is still the same. Maybe he is a transsexual woman because I don't know how much people know about Stonewall, but transsexuals, one of the few places that they were able to be out as transsexuals was in the Stonewall Inn. It's a very different story completely, but your thematic statement stays the same. So, what changes our thematic statement? Let's say you have him where you say, okay, he is very religious. He is either an Orthodox Jew or any religion. And now it's the story of him having to choose between his religious identity and being gay. It's a really interesting story. What you just did was now it's not, sometimes you have to fight to defend the people in your community, even though it costs you personally. Now your story is about how do you pick which community you raise as being the one that you hold to and that you hold true to. Your story has changed on a very fundamental level at that point. And so when you feel like you're writing along and you keep changing different little bits here, there, and everywhere, and all of a sudden you're looking at the thing and you're like, I don't know why I'm telling this story anymore. It's probably because your thematic statement changed somewhere along the way. Is that making sense to folks? Thank you. I really appreciate the nods or the shaking of heads. Very helpful. Okay. Considering your thematic statement and what you want to tell, specifically your stories. So looking at your story, figuring out who is your protagonist or protagonists, what do they want? What are the obstacles that are in their way? What are the tactics that they're using primarily to get around their obstacles? And then what is the thematic statement that you're looking to explore with the story? Um, Taking 4 minutes or so. And then you can either write in the chat or write stack and we'll talk about it. Are people feeling like they're good to go with this? They feel like they have enough info? Cool. Okay. Thank you.
So we had a quick question in the chat, a request to show the slide with the logline formula again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Julian. I can't read the chat while I'm doing this. I'm sorry, folks. I'm not good enough. So yeah, thank you.
And then a request to show the assignment slide one more time.
And I just want to say thank you, Lowen. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. Transgender is the term I should have been using. I didn't know. Um, Thank you very much. Okay. Uh, it's been a couple of minutes. If people are still working, have at it. If people are feeling like they want to share, I would love it. If people are feeling like they would not like to share, that's okay too. There's no pressure here to share.
I'll take a stab. Oh my God. Okay, there you are. Um, um, so my protagonist is Jenny. She wants to feel safe within her family and not have it to change. Um, Now this is where it gets bad. Her obstacle is uh, life comes in and takes one away through death and another one away through illness. Um, she has many tactics, fighting and whining and pleading and getting outside help. So I'm struggling between my thematic statement. I'm going to give it a stab. Um, but her logline, when Jenny has the experience of losing her family, she gains the intention to save it at all costs. Or she gains the intention to create safety without outside of it, to learn what true safety is. Those are different plays. So the the thematic statement is um, uh, fight for the people you love.
That sounds good. Sounds really good. Thank you. Cool.
Thank you.
Um, I'm going to read out a couple of them, and then there was a person who put stacks. So, uh, actually, the person who put stack is someone who I was about to read out. So I'm going to read out. Um, okay. We've got a couple of people that say they would like to share aloud. Before they do, just Judy, you said the question was, does this formula also work for poetry or poetry books? I don't feel like I can answer that question knowledgeably, to be honest. When it comes, like, I know for a fact this works for plays and it works well for movies and it works well for TV shows and it works pretty well for novels and short stories and things like that. It stories. I don't know about poetry, however, I'm sorry. Um, JD says, my statement is something like, in order to enjoy the present, we must accept our past and live beyond it. Nice. Mars C says, unfortunately, I'm stuck on tactics. I put my protagonist in a big pickle. I've done that as well a lot. Yes, that there are so many tricks to get your protagonist out of the pickles. Often it's a big button. But yes, it happens all the time. Cool. And then Caitlin, do you want you wrote stacks, so did you want to speak?
Sure. So my protagonist is a quadriplegic robot pilot who works remotely for a robot cafe. What they want is to eat their favorite curry at their favorite restaurant. Obstacles are that the restaurant is not built for wheelchair users. Some of their tactics are piloting their robot to the restaurant, eating curry vicariously through a friend, and then making that friend go to the restaurant repeatedly to figure out the ingredients and the taste, or paying their aide to cook the recipe, and just generally using their robot as a prosthetic. I'm having some trouble with the thematic statement because I know what I want to happen in the story, but distilling a theme for this one is really difficult. Some of the ones I thought up were like that maybe the whole world can be made open or accessible, or there's many ways to move through the world even without physical movement, or remote controlled robots make good prosthetics, or even that, this is based on an actual robot cafe that I saw online. And my first thought when I saw it was like, if homebound people can use robots to work in restaurants, they can also use them to perform.
Yeah, I love it. The wonderful thing about thematic statements is there's absolutely no wrong answer. You cannot answer it incorrectly. Like It's your thematic statement from your story. Great. Just once you figure out what it is for yourself, hone in on that would be my thought. Um, and then Khalid, you also said you wanted to share aloud.
Yeah. I don't have a name, but the protagonist is like a black visual artist. Um and essentially they want to share their art with the world, criticize power structures, and feed their family. So like the desire for art and sharing it is very much like a survival driven concept. And their intention, like their goal, changes over time as he questions his intentions. The obstacle or obstacles, um, money and resources, time for immediate like family survival pressures, others' perception of him as unworthy, and there's an antagonist that kind of like manufactures trauma, like horrendous events or whatever in the protagonist's life that serves as an obstacle. So the tactics will be turning the struggle into art, working with others to fight back against these forces, personal and societal, using unconventional materials to create, and radical positivity. And oh my gosh, I clicked leave by mistake for a second. The thematic statement is that the U.S. uses Black people for what they produce, regardless of the impact it has on them and their lives and personhood.
Amazing. Yeah, great. Really cool. Uh, Thank you. Thank you all. Okay, cool. So hopefully that was helpful to folks as they were kind of writing down their own things. Um, so, as we said above, there are three things that I wanted to discuss today. One was the what. How do you figure out what your story is? One was the how, which is, or rather the why, which is your thematic statement is why you're telling the story that you specifically are telling and why it's important to you. And then the how is how do you build in accountability so that you actually write the story because writing is super duper hard. And so these are a lot of different ways that I have found that have worked for me. Accountability partners, where you do a weekly check-in with folks, setting up co-working sessions at cafes and coffee shops with friends, Zoom co-working sessions where you do it for like 2 or 3 hours, and every hour you check in and say, okay, did we get done what we said we'd get done? Yes, we did. No, we didn't. Okay, what do we do for the next hour? Writing groups are amazing. I find in my experience, writing groups tend to work best for 6 to 8 weeks at a time, because after that, people's lives often get busy. So if they are segmented as literally only going for 6 to 8 weeks, and then you know you've got an end date, people are kind of able to stick through to the end and then choose to rejoin the next round. Classes, Blue Stoop has tons of them. They're amazing. Coaching, script and chapter swaps. I've done this with a number of different people, where you say, I will send you and you will send me a chapter on this date in the future. And then you kind of have the external, somebody else is saying, yes, I will be reading your thing, and also I will be sending you a thing. And then writing down the submission deadlines on your calendar for something that you're submitting to, and then working backwards to figure out when you need to get things done by in order to submit to the thing. That is an incredibly valuable one that I have done many a time. It has not worked as well for me personally as many of the others on this list, just because I find external stimulus of somebody else is a lot easier than me holding to my own personal deadlines that I am keeping to. But everybody's different, and I know a number of people who do it really well. Okay. So the last one of journaling, if we could take 2 minutes and think through other projects that you have successfully completed over the last couple of years. They can be writing projects, they can be not writing projects, and think about what accountability practices have worked for you. Because the best thing that will work for you is the stuff that worked for you in the past. And then figure out, is there any way that you can use that knowledge to help you successfully finish the first draft of whatever this story that you've been looking at for this session is. Um, 2 minutes. Okay, that is time. Um, okay, I'm just going to read aloud a couple of things that people said. Mars C said other artists, creatives can make good accountability partners too. My main accountability buddy is a digital watercolor artist. We agreed to check in via text for 100 days this winter to make sure we are engaging with our creative work at least a little bit every day. If anybody wants to respond or stack, then put in the chat. Khalid says, I definitely respond well to accountability partners. I need to get one or a dozen or so. Julian said, I meet up with friends every Saturday on Zoom to write together in silence. It's the only time I get anything done. Michelle M said, collaborative projects are an interesting fuel for accountability. Yeah. Mars C said it's also nice to have a non-writer artist friend because I'm way less prone to comparing and getting down on myself. Can't compare word counts when they don't use words. True. Brian Cox said an external deadline. Yep. Always true. And Caitlin Sierra said, both my public radio show and short play competitions are great for getting me to write and revise 10-minute pieces. Yes. I definitely need to enter more long form, full length play competitions so I get more work done. Awesome. Yes. Yes to everything that everyone just said. Oh, one extra. Leah Master Polo. I am sorry. I am mispronouncing your last name. Thank you. I do well with a repetitive schedule for writing. Doing it at the same time when I'm least likely to be interrupted early morning, sharing with others through groups and classes is also super helpful. Yes. Cool. So, okay. Uh, Free resources. And before anybody puts in the chat, yes, I do have a version of this that I will put into the chat for you all, so you don't have to like copy it or whatever. I've got it and I can paste it. But these are free resources that I've created that might help some folks. So one of these is called The Introvert's Guide to Building a Creative Community. It's a 27-page PDF. It includes templates for how to attend events, clarify your artistic brand, how to say no without being a jerk about it, preparing for general meetings, more, etc. There is another one that is called Your Creative Career, the Unofficial Walkthrough Guide about how to build up a creative career as though you were playing an old school video game. It's very much just how do you build up all the different building blocks in order to build the creative career and then gamify it. There's also a Google spreadsheet I created that is based on the Unfortunately Challenge loosely, and then I adapted and made some changes and added some stuff that is active projects, executives that you've connected with, and contests and fellowships that you've applied for. So if you download that, you can get all the different spreadsheet things that come with that Google sheet. I also send out a weekly newsletter where I do weekly Zoom co-working sessions. I know Blue Stoop does them as well. There's a ton of different places that do it. I do them as well. And the way we do ours is that we meet for 2 hours and we do a check-in at the hour mark and say, did you complete what you were working on? Yes, no. What are you working on for your next hour? And for me, it's really helpful to have that accountability of just saying, nope, I ended up going off and getting tea and got distracted, but now I'm back and I'm working. And the final one would be my last Thursday on the Stoop session. That was about writing the 10-minute play. And that was more about how the basics of telling a story and going a little more in depth for anyone that was interested in that intention obstacle tactics thing. It went kind of more in depth into that. And I'm going to be teaching a class at Blue Stoop. It is called Mapping the First Draft, a script writing workshop. We are going to be doing a system that I use that is multiple outlines that get increasingly detailed. I find that this really helps in terms of building up to writing the first draft so that when you get to writing the first draft, you're not kind of floundering and not sure what the story is that you're telling. And we'll also be looking at storytelling through a lot of different lenses. So controlled release of information, how do you build in subtext? How do you create empathy for your character? Things like that. And so that will be happening. I believe there's one spot left for that class. And then thank you. Thank you to Blue Stoop so much for letting me do this. Thank you to all of you for participating, for being here, for nodding your heads. I was grateful for that. I know it doesn't seem like much from your side, but it's a really big deal when people are like, yes, I understand, or no. It helps. If you have a spare moment, I would really appreciate it if you would fill out the survey, which I will put into the chat as well. That will help me kind of understand, was I going too fast? Was I going too slow? Was this information helpful? Was it not especially helpful? That's okay. Like, I would like to know that. My goal is to get better. So that would be really great if you would be willing to do that. Um, and with the last few minutes, just sharing, clarifying, do you feel like you have a clearer sense at all of the story that you want to tell, and the thematic statement that you're looking to focus on? Do you have more ideas about building accountability into your life, or what are you struggling with, and what questions do you still have? Kind of opening up the floor, essentially. So that's it. Oh, Julian, you already shared. Celeste, thank you. Celeste says, this was really helpful and I'm feeling inspired. Thank you. Sorry, I'm off cam under the weather. Cool. Thank you. And Brian Cox says, can a story have more than one thematic statement? A story can have a gazillion thematic statements. It can have so many, but realistically, the story having more than one thematic statement gets harder because then you're writing two multiple thematic statements. The idea of the thematic statement is not so much that it is the rule of law. It's the thing that you are using as your North Star to guide you of, this is the thing that if everything else gets stripped away from my story, this is what I really want it to be about at its essence and at its core. Um, and so if you have two or three thematic statements, now you're trying to build in more things. And so you're juggling, and you might end up in a situation where your story requires you to get rid of one of those, and then you have to make a hard decision. Julian.
Yeah, I had a question. I kept coming back to the idea like, oh, the moral of the story, but I'm wondering if there's a difference between the moral of the story and the thematic statement. Um, do you see any difference between those ideas?
Yeah, I do actually. For me, I feel like the thematic statement. So if it's an external story, yes, it's the moral of the story because it's literally just who a situation where a character is going up. They are growing, they are changing, they are getting better. The moral is going to match up. A situation where the character is going down and they are sinking down, what the character learns by the end of the story is not necessarily what you are trying to say as the author. And so I would say that the thematic statement is about what you are trying to say more than it is what the character is necessarily going through and experiencing. But you are using the character to show that thing. Um, yeah, sorry that. Uh, Leah says this is very helpful. Thanks, Toby. Primarily a poet, but thinking about starting a nonfiction, and this is a great outline for how to start. Awesome. Thank you. Yes, and yes, absolutely. Like for nonfiction, this totally works. Yes. Uh, Ben says, thank you. Beyond the scope of the hour, but any thoughts on how one finds minds for compelling stories to tell? How do you know when an idea you've got is compelling? Does it excite you? Would be my like realistically, writing is really, really hard, and it often takes a lot. Like the first draft is not the last draft, and you're just gonna have to keep pumping away at the thing to get it to be the story that you really want to tell. And so it has to excite you to some extent. Yeah. So I think it's not, is it compelling, but is it compelling to you? Would be my thought. Mars C, do you have any tips on finding tactics, solutions for your protagonist that still feel hard earned? I'm writing a near feature sci-fi with some urban fantasy elements, and I'm wary of handing my protagonist their solutions. Yes, great question. So often, um, if you give them a lot of space and time between when they learn the solution and when that solution comes into play, it is an easy way to, like, the audience, the reader, the whoever will have forgotten what the solution is, and now it requires your protagonist to think about what all the different tools they have in their toolkit are that they could use. Another thing is, if you, instead of giving them one solution, you give them two or three that they then have to piece together. And so you figure out what the ending of them piecing it together is going to look like, and then you figure out the disparate parts that you're going to build together to build into the tool that they use to finally save the day. Would be my first thought. Akila says, thank you for the space. I would describe myself as someone who hates writing. Oh, writing is hard, but also you're great. So I'm taking steps to heal that relationship. I'm thinking of exploring short stories. This gathering was the first of many steps. Glad that we were able to be here. Cool. That's great. Yes. Sarah Daisy Charles says, I found this super helpful. Thank you, Toby. JD Helen says, thank you. I'm at the start of a novel I scrapped years ago and happy to go into it with a better direction. And Lowen, I apologize again if I'm mispronouncing your name. I hope that I'm doing it right. That's helpful for a self-discovery story too. Thank you. Cool. Thank you. Awesome. I think it's like, oh, sorry. Hazel says, this is my first ever class on writing. So thank you, Julian, Blue Stoop, and Toby. I've written lots of little stories as an immigrant new to America. So maybe this could become a memoir. I'm so exploring writing a romance, isn't everyone? Have a ludicrous premise, but realized I need a theme. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. I'm going to hand it back over to Julian. But thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Toby. And thank you to everyone for taking time to be here. I'm so excited that we have people who are, midway through their writing journey and also at the very beginning. I think that's so exciting. And probably my favorite thing about Blue Stoop is that we're all in the space together. So yeah, I have shared a few links in the chat. I will paste them in again. There's that feedback survey you heard about earlier. We definitely want to hear from you. Also an opportunity to tell us what you want to see in the future. Speaking of which, if you have an idea to share, you don't have to have teaching experience. You can just get some teaching experience by pitching a Thursdays on the Stoop session. So there's a link where you can learn more about how to do that. It does pay money, so you can learn and get paid at the same time. We love when that happens. And I'm currently curating 2026's Thursdays on the Stoop session, so your timing couldn't be better. Classes, we've got them open for registration now. They are filling kind of fast, honestly, but there is financial aid available. Payment plans, and even a handful of full scholarships. So it is worth checking out regardless of your budget. If you want to take a class for that accountability instructor, I think it's really helpful. There's Toby's class, of course, with one seat left, but lots of 11 other options to pick from. So check them out. Upcoming events, we've got Thursdays on the Stoop almost every Thursday. Next week is reading for an audience. I think it's particularly with like a prose focus. So if you want to get better at reading a story for an audience, next week is a great time to try that out. That'll be with Mary Berman, who's a wonderful author, local author. And then also on Wednesdays from 3:30 to 5:30 p.m. East Coast time on Zoom, we do creative co-working, similar to what Toby was describing before. It is a co-working session where you can just sit down with other friendly faces on the screen and get some work done. I know I find it hard to make time to write, and so that is why we do that kind of stuff, just to help you carve out that space. You can follow our weekly newsletter or social media accounts to stay up to date on all we're doing. And last but not least, if you want to support the work we're doing, free programs like this one, if you want to help us keep them free, you can pitch in. Any amount is great. We are very grateful for it. We're a super small organization, and so your money goes a lot farther than it would somewhere bigger. With that, I will end my spiel. We'll get this session up on YouTube for you as soon as we can. Appreciate you all. Enjoy the rest of your day.